All right, so at this point now we have our footage. It's been prepared in After Effects so that it is 24 frames per second. We've also added a time code and we figured out all of our blocking passes, and now we're ready to start our project here in Maya. And so I'm going to start here with Maya and a blank, excuse me, in a blank scene. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a project folder and then start to bring in all of these sort of assets so we can start making our poses. So I'm going to start by going up here to File. We're going to go down to Project Window, and we're going to make a new project. Here where it says New, I'm going to click New, and then for the current project, I'm going to call it Crawl. So we'll do the standard naming convention, last name, first name, underscore, and then the name of the project. And I'm just going to call it Final, because this is our final assignment. For the location, let's go ahead and make sure we're saving this into the M drive. So go ahead and select the M drive and then hit accept. And then we're ready to start bringing in the files that we're going to need for our animation. And so I would like my footage to be handy there. I would also like my the blocking poses that I've blocked out. I would also like those to be in there. And then I would also like my rig. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go find the rig that I'm going to use. So again, I don't care which rig you use. You can either use the one you did entirely from scratch, or you can use the setup machine rig. I would just use whichever one is going to give you the best performance. So whichever one functions the best, I would use that one. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my final rig here, and I'm going to right click and copy that. I'm going to go into the M drive and let's go find our project folder. And then under scenes, let's go ahead and paste our rig in there. And then let's go find our footage. So here is my reference footage. I'm going to copy that. And in my source images, I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. Now normally this folder would be for textures, but I'm just going to put this in here because we're going to eventually use it for reference. And then let's also grab our text document, wherever I put that. So my blocking poses, let's copy that and also paste that into source images. And that way we just have this stuff always handy. And when we back up our project folder, all of our pertinent files come along with it. And then let's go into Maya and we're going to reference our rig. Now this is something I noticed with a few of the rigs that were completed for class. The geometry was referenced in and then skinned to the rig. Typically you wouldn't reference the geometry like that. You would just import the actual geometry and then skin the real geometry to the rig. Typically the only time we reference things in are, like in this case, we would reference the final rig itself. So once the character is entirely modeled, skinned, and rigged, then we would reference the rig into our scene. That's going to allow us to have a lighter scene file because the scene, when we're actually animating our character, it's going to reference the original rig file and bring that in. And because it's referencing the original file, that rig technically doesn't exist within our working animation file because it's, again, referencing the original. So it's just a way to make your scenes lighter. So let's say we're doing a film and we have 100 shots. We could have all 100 shots reference the same rig file instead of importing the same rig into several different files. And so let's go ahead and reference our rig into our scene. So I will go to File. Let's go down to Create Reference. And then let's reference the rig. So again, we don't want to animate in the original or final rig file. We want to reference that rig into a new scene. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to select that final rig file and hit reference. And it should reference in an instance of our character here. And then we could start animating this. Now, before I do go any further with this, I want to save this real quick. So I'll go to File, Save Scene As. And let's save a new version of our file. And again, we'll stick with our naming convention. And we'll do last name, first name, underscore final. And then we can do incrementals here. I'm going to do blocking. Pass 1. And then we'll hit Save As. Continue. And then there's a few settings in Maya I want to make sure I set up here before we start our blocking. So one thing I'll want to do is go up to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and Preferences. In the left-hand column, I'm going to select Animation, and here it says Default Tangent. Let's do Flat. And the default out, let's do Stepped. So again, we don't want any in-betweens in our poses as we set them up. So if we do Flat and Stepped, it'll be in blocking, so it'll hold frames or hold keys, and that way when we set up poses, there will be no in-betweens. So we'll go ahead and set Flat and Stepped. We'll hit Save. Actually, before I hit Save, let's go back up here to Settings. So I guess right above Animation, and then over here where it says Time, just make sure you have 24 frames per second selected. It should be by default, but it wouldn't hurt to double check that, and then we'll hit Save. The last thing I want to do is set up my camera, and so I'll go up here to Create. Let's go down to Cameras and hit Camera. Let's go ahead and name the new camera so we can select it over here in the outliner, and I'm going to call this Main _ Camera. And then let's go up to Panels, Perspective, and select our main camera. I'm going to turn on the resolution gate here by clicking on this icon. And then you'll want to set up your camera from the perspective or angle that you want to start blocking your poses in. Again, this is absolutely vital. You know, as animators, sometimes we cut corners and things like that, just in terms of getting a pose that is clear and easy to read. And the poses that we set up, they may look good from one angle, but if we start to move that camera and things like that, that pose may not look as, or it may not read as clearly as it does from any other angle. So again, we want to establish our camera just to check our poses from, to make sure they look good, clear, and easy to read from that established angle. So I would maybe set this up. You could maybe even use your reference as a guideline. So I think Haley's would be a pretty good example of that. I think we have a sort of an established camera angle already that we could pull from this. So she starts off screen here on the right. So I would probably angle it something like this. And then we could have our character start off screen, screen right, and come into view. And so I'm going to do maybe a 3/4 view angled in here. And we can always change this later if we need to. Again, if it'll help our poses read a little more strongly. So I'm going to set this as sort of my initial camera setup, and then in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to click this icon here that looks like a camera with a lock on it, and this is going to prevent me from changing my camera on accident, because I tend to do that a lot if I don't lock that. And then I'll save this again. So we'll go to File, Save Scene As, and I'll just save over that blocking pass part 1. And at this point, I would start blocking my poses. And so, just a refresher here, with the World Con can be used to set the initial position of your character. You will never, ever, ever, ever animate this World Con. So let's say I wanted my rig to start off screen. I could use this to move it over or off screen like so. But once I get this initial position set up, I would never touch this World Con again. And at this point, I'm only ever using the controllers of my character to move it and animate it on screen. So at this point, you know, we've blocked poses before, so I'm not going to go through the entire process, but this will at least get you started. If you need a refresher in terms of actually doing the blocking process, I would refer back to the run and jump that we did, because like I said, it's the exact same process. So I will stop here. The rest of class today will be work day. All Friday will be, well, actually, the rest of the semester will be work days. So Friday, at the end of class, your blocking pass stage 1 is due. This process usually goes pretty quick. So once you get your blocking pass stage 1 done, just immediately jump into blocking pass 2. And then blocking pass 2, you'll have until the end of class next Monday. So before, I guess before break, So you'll have until the end of class Monday to turn in blocking pass 2. And then once you get your blocking passes done, you will start doing your in-betweens. So in that case, and maybe I should mention this, I have a bad habit of forgetting to do this. But once you get both of your blocking passes done, you'll want to change your settings. So just moments ago, we went to Windows, Settings and Preferences. And then under Animation, we did this flat and stepped. If you leave this at stepped, it will make all of your poses blocking. So any new keyframe you set will be blocked. So once you're ready to clean up your animation and clean up the in-betweens, you'll just make sure you come in here and where it says stepped, change that back to flat. And that way you'll actually get in-betweens when you set new keys, if you need to set new keys to adjust your animation. I always forget to do that, and then I start cleaning my poses and I'm like, oh, why is it blocked? So don't forget to do that after you've done both blocking passes. Set that back to flat. Trying if there's anything else maybe I should mention. I don't think so. So yep, I'll stop here.